Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. I'm your host for today. I'm going to be talking about China and Saudi Arabia today. Quite an interesting conversation. So, looks like the sands are shifting in the desert, guys. This is a huge news. President Xi is going to Saudi Arabia and they're going to announce something major, which is going to absolutely shock the world. And you can see the title here, Trade and Security on the Agenda. I'm going to talk about trade first, and I will go into security later. And what's happening right now? Saudi Arabia is looking to be independent from the United States, and everybody knows Saudi Arabia and the United States have not been getting along well. MBS absolutely hates Biden, and Biden absolutely hates MBS. When Biden came to power, he promised he would make Saudi Arabia a pariah. And when Biden went to Saudi Arabia to try and make amends, he was doing some sort of ridiculous fist pump. I mean, how stupid is that? When you go to another country and you do a fist bump instead of a handshake, how insulting is that? And all the world's media was just laughing at it, laughing at his antics. He was not even greeted at the airport by MBS. How embarrassing was that for Biden? But mark my words, when President Xi arrives in Saudi Arabia, you will see the red carpet being rolled out for President Xi. He will be given a real royal treatment. And if you don't believe me, you can wait until you see it all over the news. Maybe the news might not even cover it. The Western news might not even cover all of that stuff because this is hugely embarrassing for the West. But there's going to be some real major shifting of sands when he arrives. So when it comes to trade, he is looking at buying oil in terms of yuan, and China does want to reduce its dependencies on the dollar. As you know, the dollar right now is the world reserve currency, and that gives the US plenty of bonuses, gives plenty of advantages when it comes to printing money, because the world needs dollars. The world needs dollars to buy oil. They need dollars to buy gas. Many other commodities are traded in dollars as well. A lot of the countries around the world are forced to keep the dollar to buy these commodities, to buy other goods as well. And most of these dollars end up back in the US Treasury, which means that the bonds in the US are getting cheaper and cheaper. The cost of borrowing gets cheaper. And this is how the US is basically having its hegemony, is using its petrodollar. And however, I think the world is having enough right now. And you can see by this graph here how US Treasury yield, 10-year US Treasury yield has been going down over the years ever since they were on the petrodollar. It's on a downwards curve. But you can see recently is starting to go up. So things are not looking good for the dollar. The countries around the world are starting to de-dollarize. However, you might think there's too much dollars floating around the world. No, there's actually a shortage of dollars. And you can see the Federal Reserve QE program to print 4.5 trillion was an awful monetary policy. But the truth is, according to financial analysts, the world is still short by 12.8 trillion. And this is because, you know, still most of the trade around the world happens in dollar. People are still buying energy in terms of dollar and other goods as well. And countries just do not have enough dollars lying around. Plus, the dollar is very expensive now. And because the dollar is so expensive, the cost of goods have gone up. So this means countries need to keep more of the dollar to buy the same amount they did last year. And as you can see, it's just not good relying on the dollar. Your own currency will start to devalue itself because the dollar is so strong. And that's the problem. And this is why the world wants to de-dollarize. And this is why Saudis want to have their own energy policy away from the petrodollar. And this is why China comes in. So why is China important to Saudi Arabia? And as you can see from this figure, China is the number one trading partner for Saudi Arabia. its oil sales to China is more than double than second place figure. Second place is India, then you have Japan, then you have South Korea, and United States is not even in the top three, guys. It's number five at the moment. So this is why China wants to get in, have a deal with Saudi Arabia, and if they can buy most or nearly all of the Saudi oil in yuan, then that means that China does not have to keep all of these dollars in their central banks. They can start dumping these dollars because the only reason they keep all of these dollars is because they need it to buy energy, to buy commodities around the world. But right now, things are changing. They're buying energy from Russia in rubles and in yuan. They're buying energy from Iran as well. They are also buying other energy from Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Central Asian countries as well. There's pipelines going into China from there, and they're also buying that in their own currency. So things are changing around the world, but the big fish is Saudi Arabia. And if China can secure um, Saudi Arabian oil in yuan, then that means China can fast accelerate dumping all of these dollars. They do not need to keep all of these dollars because only reason they keep it is to buy these commodities, and it's a huge amount. So this is going to be real bad news for the dollar if this happens. However, it's still a long road ahead. The other option is for the BRICS to have their own reserve currency. Saudi Arabia is looking to join the BRICS, and it's going to happen very, very soon. And I believe President Xi going to Saudi Arabia will kind of lay the groundwork for Saudi Arabia to apply formally. And on the next meeting in the BRICS, Saudi Arabia will be invited and fast tracked into joining the BRICS. So the BRICS could be also reserve currency, so that is also an option. Mainly because maybe the world does not want to, you know, maybe the world does not want another world reserve currency like the US dollar. Maybe they don't want the Chinese yuan. They rather have a world reserve currency based on BRICS, and the BRICS will be based on commodities, rare earth minerals, and gold, and other important commodities. So that could happen as well. That is an option. Either way, Saudi Arabia is going to move away from the dollar, either go into yuan or either go into this new BRICS currency. And things are happening very, very fast and very, very soon. As you can see here, Saudi Aramco wants to prioritize energy supply to China for the next 50 years. So it makes sense for them to agree something with China, and that is down to the trade, and this safeguards not only China's future but also safeguards Saudi Arabia's future as well. Saudi Arabia do not want to rely on the dollar. They do not want to rely on the Americans. The Americans have been very, very unreliable, and you can see how unreliable they were to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia are really, really unhappy with the way America has been running things. For example, all of these Patriot missiles have been useless. Biden decided to take them away, and these oil facilities in Saudi Arabia got attacked. The Khashoggi murder, how Biden blamed MBS for it, and there's some court cases happening in the United States as well, which will sue MBS pretty soon. But MBS is asking for diplomatic immunity, so we'll see if that happens. There's other things as well. There's Houthis as well who have been taken off the international terrorist list, and many other things Saudi Arabians are not very happy about with the United States, and mainly because they're just going back on their word, and also the way United States have been going about their business around the world and what they're doing with Russia and all these sanctions against Russia. So that Saudi Arabia feel that one day, today it's Russia, tomorrow might be Saudi Arabia. So they want to make sure they do not want to rely on the United States, they do not want to rely on the dollar. They want to have as many international partners as they can and try and safeguard their future. So the United States have said that US reassures OPEC that the Russian oil price cap won't be replicated also to target to cartel. So one of the reasons Saudi Arabia is not very happy with the United States, obviously you've got the oil price cap, And the oil price cap, it seems like they're targeting Russia, but it's not. They are targeting OPEC. And one day, like I said, they might be targeting Russia. Tomorrow, they might be targeting Saudi Arabia. But the US has already gone back on their word, by the way. So US basically said they reassure OPEC that the Russian oil price cap won't affect them, but it will affect them because if they're having a price cap which only forcing countries to buy oil at a certain price cap, then you are affecting OPEC because Russia is part of OPEC. But they have already gone back on their word now, US. You can see they've created something called a NOPEC bill, the US bill to pressure OPEC plus oil group. And the NOPEC bill is basically floating around in Congress right now. And this is basically going to be targeting OPEC and OPEC plus members. So already they've gone back on the word. It is targeting them and it will target them. So the other reason Saudi Arabia wants to pivot to China is because they're building a new city, and there's actually three major projects happening in Saudi Arabia right now. There's one called the Line, which is like a um, straight mirrored skyscraper on the ground, which is going to be traveling along Saudi Arabia. And there is another city called Neom City, and I believe there's another project, a housing project they're building in the desert as well. So all of this is going to cost them trillions, and this 1 trillion city of the future is only for the line itself. But there's also the Neom city as well, and plenty of other projects that Saudi Arabia is doing. So these are some of the projects Saudi Arabia is doing. They want to become the next Dubai because they know oil is not going to run forever. So they want to build for their future. They want to build an economy which is away from oil, and they can just use oil as an export, while they will have a complete separate economy, making money through other means as well. So not just depending on oil. So did I say around 2 to 3 trillion worth of projects Saudi Arabia is doing? Some articles are saying it could be up to 7 trillion. The 2 to 3 trillion are the projects that are happening now. 7 trillion is probably all of the six major projects that Saudi Arabia is building. And guess who they will need for help during building all of this stuff? It's no better than China. China has got huge amounts of experience building infrastructure for China as well as other countries as well. There's huge plans for China to go in there and help Saudi Arabia with all of these infrastructure projects. And from what I heard from a lot of Chinese articles, Saudi Arabia have already signed deals with a lot of Chinese companies. And during this visit, President Xi's visit to Saudi Arabia, they're going to announce a lot of these projects that have been given to Chinese companies. There's also going to be high-speed rails running in the desert as well. China has got experience of that. They have got high speed rails running in Xinjiang. Um, there's a lot of projects that are going to be given to China, and we're talking about trillions and trillions worth. And again, the West is going to be absolutely shocked and jealous regarding all of these projects going to China. But who else are you going to give these projects to? I mean, there's no better country in the world in terms of infrastructure than to give it to China because they have the best experience, they have the best workers. It's common knowledge every country has got its own strengths. If you want a country full of lawyers, if you need some bankers, if you need some public relations, if you need marketing, America is your place because they're very good at that. But if you want pure construction workers, infrastructure builders, China is the place. And this is why Chinese, construction companies are some of the biggest companies in the world, making lots of money. So another reason why MBS is going to the Chinese when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to investments, when it comes to helping them build these massive infrastructure projects is because of this incident which happened with the murder. And after that murder happened, a lot of Western firms pulled their money out of Saudi Arabia. A lot of companies who had been invested in Neom pulled out, and it became so bad that literally every single penny was pulled out of this project. Every single Western company basically pulled out. There was nothing left whatsoever. So Saudi Arabia had pretty much no choice but to go to the Chinese and help them, liaise with them, and try and get their help in terms of helping building these projects, making them come into reality. And this is also why Saudi Arabia needs their own independent energy policy. They cannot rely on Western companies. They cannot rely on the US dollar. They cannot rely on the USA because of situations like this. And you can see why they are pivoting towards China, because these projects for Saudi Arabia are very important for their modernization. And if these Western companies suddenly all pull out of these projects, Saudi Arabia would be put into a really difficult place. So this is one of the main reasons why Saudi Arabia is moving towards China, and you can see why. So one of the other main reasons President Xi is going to Saudi Arabia is because of this. So remember when I said that trade and security was on the agenda for Saudi Arabia? This is very important, and security will be on the agenda for Saudi Arabia, because if Saudi Arabia go away from the dollar, they're going to put themselves as a target. And the United States is not going to sit there and allow other countries to use other currencies apart from the dollar. Look what happened to Saddam Hussein. Look what happened to Colonel Gaddafi. They both tried to pivot away from the dollar, and look what happened to them. And the rest is history, as you know. So Saudi Arabia is going to be a major, major target for the United States if they dare to move away from the dollar. And this is where trade and security comes in. So get this, if US does lose its petrodollar status, can you imagine what that's going to cause in the US? There's going to be hyperinflation. If countries around the world start accelerating their dumping of the dollar, China is already dumping dollars, Russia's already doing it, India's already doing it, Japan's already doing it. But if they lose petrodollar status, the whole world will start accelerating their dump of the dollar, because they're not going to need that dollar to buy oil or gas anymore, because if Saudi Arabia starts moving to other currencies, and especially the yuan, uh, other countries will have an alternative rather than just to hold an expensive dollar in their central banks. So this is going to be a huge problem for the United States. Hyperinflation, because all of this money is going to end up back in the US. Because once countries start dumping these dollars, all of it's going to go back to the United States, and you're going to see hyperinflation. The cost of goods are going to shoot up. The bond yields are going to start going up. Um, they're going to have to increase interest rates, and it's just going to cause absolute mayhem in the United States. And this is why the United States is not going to sit there lying down and allow Saudi Arabia to do this. And the United States will basically draw up plans before any of this could happen. And one of the plans US could do is to invade Saudi Arabia. And you might think to yourself, no, they can't. They can't invade Saudi Arabia. Well, I'll tell you one thing. You know, if there is a danger of hyperinflation of the United States, this would be the end of the United States. There's going to be riots out in the streets. There's going to be mass mayhem. They will not allow that to happen. So in 1973, there was something called an oil embargo, which the Western countries placed against the United States because of the war against Israel at the time. And back then, the United States was planning on invading Saudi Arabia. And they gave Saudi Arabia a choice, basically. They said, look, you know, because I've read this in certain books, by the way. You might think, how the hell did US manage to get this petrodollar thing agreed with the Saudi Arabians? It was a lot of you used a lot of where you would say a carrot and a stick method. So they basically said to Saudi Arabia, if you do not agree to this, then we will basically invade you. But if you do agree to selling your oil in petrodollar, we will provide you the security needs. We will provide you with everything that you need, and we will guarantee your safety, blah blah blah. So this is like a gangster. When you have when you have a shop in New York, for example, and these gangsters walk into your shop, you've seen this in many Hollywood films, and they ask for money. They say, "Look, you give us money, and we will make sure this shop is protected. We will provide you security. We will give you everything you need, and we will keep you happy." And if you say no to these gangsters then come in the next day, break up your whole shop, destroy your whole shop, and destroy your business. And you've seen this in many American movies, in Hollywood movies, and this is what's happening here in real life. So if Saudi Arabia dare to move away from the dollar, um, I I actually see United States invading Saudi Arabia, and there's no doubt in my mind they will do it. First, they're going to try regime change, and believe me, they have tried regime change with MBS, and they have tried it for the past 2 or 3 years. Biden has been trying it. That Biden does not like MBS at all, and he's been trying to do this for the past 2 years. At one point, Biden was going directly to MBS's father and kind of talking to him rather than MBS himself. And they were trying everything they can to try and do the regime change. It hasn't worked. MBS is all powerful now, and there's no way of getting rid of him. And MBS has done a lot of things to stay in power. So it's not going to be easy. So the next step is to invade Saudi Arabia. And I believe that is one option that could happen. You're already seeing lots of signs happening around the world. You're seeing a lot of stories saying that Iran's going to attack Saudi Arabia. And then, I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing stories about human rights abuses in Saudi Arabia coming out soon. You're going to be seeing stories about September 11th, how most of the people on the plane were Saudi Arabians. You will see a lot of these stories first coming out over the next few months if Saudi agree to this um, petrodollar going into yuan, and eventually could lead to an invasion. And trust me, when US is under major threat, and when they feel they are under a threat, they will find a reason to get into Saudi Arabia. They will make up some BS like they did with Iraq with weapons of mass destruction, and this is why we have to go into Iraq. They'll make up some BS to go into Afghanistan. They'll make up some BS going into Libya, going into Syria. And they can do the same thing with Saudi Arabia. They'll make up some BS, and they don't really have to do much. They can easily come out with a story saying these guys in September 11th, they were the real criminals. These guys are all Saudis. It all points to the government, and this is why we have to go into Saudi Arabia. Yeah, we went into the wrong country with Afghanistan and Iraq, but Saudi Arabia are the real criminals, and this is why we have to go in there and finish the job. So this is why security is going to be very important for Saudi Arabia, and they know that if they do pivot towards China, they are going to be in the crosshairs of the United States, and they will need security. If the United States does not provide them with security and pulls out all of their weapons and troops, and there's still a lot of U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia, and there's still a lot of U.S. weapons stationed in Saudi Arabia. If United States decide to pull everything back and make Saudi Arabia into some sort of pariah, they will, Saudi Arabia will need some sort of security, and China will want to come in, but China cannot do it alone. I believe China will ask for help from Russia and other countries as well. We're talking about maybe there's some of the SCO members even, but we'll see. I don't have full answers to how this will work, but what I do know, this is going to open a real dangerous can of worms if this goes ahead. And it's going to change the outlook for the world. The dollar's never going to be the same again. And it's going to cause major, major shockwaves if Saudi Arabia and China agree to selling oil in yuan. So what do you guys think will happen? Do you think US will invade Saudi Arabia if Saudi Arabia decides to sell oil in yuan? What do you think about President Xi getting the red carpet and which Biden did not? What do you think about the de-dollarization that's happening all over the world and how it's going to affect the United States if Saudi Arabia does decide to sell in yuan? So many questions, guys, so many questions. It's all going to be very interesting how all of this plays out over the next few weeks and next few months. Very, very interesting indeed. Don't forget, the oil price cap and the EU embargo on Russian oil is going to take effect next month in December. So you will see a lot of oil price rises happening, a lot of mayhem happening in the oil price market. Also, don't forget, the US is running out of reserves. They have been releasing their reserves to push down oil prices. And there's other things happening around the world as well. The OPEC Plus, they're going to stop making 2 billion barrels as well. That's going to come off the market. And China's going to eventually come out of lockdown as well. They're still under lockdown, so their oil demand is very low. So once they come out of lockdown, it's going to be full steam ahead. Oil prices are going to start shooting up again. So there's a lot of stuff still to happen over the next few months. It's very, very unpredictable how things will turn out. But what do you guys think? Don't forget to share your thoughts on the comment section. And if you can support the channel, I'd really appreciate it. I need 11 more of you to join my locals. Just 11, guys. It's not a big number. It's enough for me to carry on with this full time. Um, and I really, really appreciate the support if you can give it. And also, you can always buy me a coffee and buy me a coffee as well. And if you cannot do that, I'm happy with you guys liking, sharing, commenting for the algorithm. Every one of you is very, very important to me, and I really appreciate all of the support you guys have been giving me and helping me grow. So thanks for all of that, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.